America, the land of opportunity, right? Think about this. The best and greatest country in the world, the best country that ever existed, liberty, freedom, prosperity, on and on and on. But look at you. It's the land of milk and honey, but everyone is always trying to find a side hustle. Everyone is endlessly talking about being on their grind. You know, motivational speakers are a billion-dollar industry. Life coaches, self-help books. Social media is full of inspirational quotes, so-called, on and on, for supposedly people who are living in the best country in the world. While you look like, to everyone else, you look like you're constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. You look like you're barely holding it together. Like you need someone to pump you up just to help you get out of bed in the morning. How great can it really be? Okay, I mean, let's do an evaluation of reality, just for a second, you know? Let's look at the situation in America objectively. Maybe some of the elements that are usually overlooked in America, or that are only overlooked in isolation. But let's look at it as a whole. Let's look at it as an organic whole. First of all, roughly half of all of the current working age population in America today, the adult population, between 40 to 50% of the adults who are in America today, who are, you know, in the leading positions in America, whether it's in business or in government or what have you, about half of the adult population in America grew up with divorced parents, means single mothers mostly. Okay, well, we're all aware of the emotional and the developmental issues that can affect kids when they're growing up in broken homes, homes without fathers, and so on. There is trauma from that, no doubt. No matter how great that mother is, no matter how great that father may be, a child without two parents who are actively involved in bringing that child up, that child has a much harder time than a child who has both parents. That's a statistical fact. Okay, so half of your adults grew up like that. They were impacted by that. Then if you look at the statistics of abuse and neglect that was reported throughout the 1980s and 1990s, somewhere between 25% and 40% of all American adults today suffered abuse while they were growing up. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, emotional neglect, and so on. Do you understand? So you have that trauma as well in your adult population, and all of the associated psychological aftermath of that they're dealing with, that they're coping with. At least 10% of American adults today grew up in poverty and economic hardship when they were children. And now in adulthood, 25% of adult American women have been victims of rape or attempted rape. And half of all American women have experienced some form of sexual violence. A quarter of all men, American men, have suffered some form of sexual violence in the United States. If you look at the other crime statistics of the past, say 4 decades, then that would leave you with 20% of all Americans who know someone who's been murdered. It's a brutal society. The people have grown up with severe and abnormal conditions in that country, all of which are deteriorative to their mental health. And now think about the fact that an adult in America today, say someone who was born in 1990, if they were born in 1990, they're 35 years old now, they likely spent 50,000 hours watching television, 40,000 hours surfing the internet, and up to 20,000 hours playing video games. That's 110,000 hours of passive media consumption, 35% of their entire life. That's more time than they probably spent working or studying or even sleeping. It's equivalent to spending every waking moment of an entire decade glued to a screen. I mean, in fact, if you want to be accurate about it, we should just subtract the time that they probably slept. You know, only count their waking hours. In that case, the average 35-year-old American has literally spent more than half of their life watching television, surfing the internet, or playing video games. Passive consumption of media, roughly 55% of their lives. I mean, no wonder whenever anything even mildly interesting happens in their life, they'll say, wow, it was just like a movie, without fail, you know? Because media is literally their frame of reference. Media, popular media, not actual experience. Now combine that with the real trauma issues that they have from growing up and from the violence and the insecurity of their society where they live. They're not processing any of that. They're not processing anything that they've been through. Instead, there's just escapism, avoidance, isolation, desensitization, you know? and this, escape into false versions of reality, simplified versions of reality, and so on. The Instagram world, the virtual universe of the internet becomes their unnatural, natural habitat. The average 35-year-old American male has spent roughly 3,000 hours watching pornography. That's equivalent to about 5 months of continuous nonstop viewing. Okay, obviously all of this combined has devastating cognitive impact. Attention spans evaporate. There's a sort of a constant state of partial attention where people are continuously distracted. They're kind of paying attention and kind of not. It erodes their critical thinking skills, their problem solving skills. It deteriorates both their working memory and their long-term memory. It erodes their emotional regulation. It causes anxiety. It causes depression. It causes volatility. It impairs their social skills, their communication skills, their empathy, their ability to even interact with people face to face properly. It programs you with a kind of behavioral addiction, low impulse control, on and on. Not to mention information overload, where you're accessing far more information than you could ever process. And all this just ends up making your whole perspective of the world an incoherent jumble of random bits of data, random theories and opinions, and so on. And again, remember, all of this cognitive damage is being inflicted on people who most likely are already carrying real life trauma that has never been dealt with from their childhood and from growing up. And okay, if you can afford it, you can go to therapy. Everybody's going to a therapist, right? Well, over 60% of therapists themselves report that they themselves have psychological and emotional disorders. Because of course they do. They come from the same society. They try to rationalize that by calling themselves wounded healers. But very often they wound more than they heal. Because there's a very significant number of therapy patients who report abuse of one form or another from their therapists. I mean, ideally, you'd be able to talk to your family. That's what normal people would do. But we've already said that a lot of them, at least 40-50% of them, come from broken homes. And about 30% of all American adults report that they are estranged from their families, from their parents, or from their siblings. The average close friendship in America doesn't last more than 5 years. Forget about romantic relationships, dating relationships, that barely makes it to 2 years. Usually it's only a few months. Even most marriages don't last a decade in the United States. You're people who are adrift. It's a society that's adrift. There's no anchor, there's no port, there's no dock, there's no rudder. There's no map and there's no destination. That's your society. I mean, look, America, the land of opportunity, right? Think about this. The best and greatest country in the world, the best country that ever existed, liberty, freedom, prosperity, on and on and on. But look at you. It's the land of milk and honey, but everyone is always trying to find a side hustle. Everyone is endlessly talking about being on their grind. Motivational speakers are $1 billion industry. Life coaches, self-help books. Social media is full of inspirational quotes, so-called, on and on, for supposedly people who are living in the best country in the world. While you look like, to everyone else, you look like you're constantly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. You look like you're barely holding it together. Like you need someone to pump you up just to help you get out of bed in the morning. How great can it really be? You flood social media with that stuff. All that you can do it, the you can do it affirmations, all the you will survive this posts. You're beautiful, you're important, you're special, you're a champion. All of that. You flood social media with that. You flood social media with those things. And everyone in the world sees it. You understand? Everyone in the world sees that, and it looks to them like America is staring in the bathroom mirror trying to pull themselves together to face the day. That's what it looks like. You see what I mean? It looks very sad to people outside. People in countries that don't proclaim to be the greatest and most wonderful nation on earth, well, they don't have to hype themselves up just to do normal things. They don't have to hype themselves up just to function in the world. People in Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, so-called, they don't need motivational speakers. They don't need life coaches. They don't need inspirational Instagram quotes just to be able to stop crying in the office parking lot and go to work. Honestly, it always looks like it's a toss-up with you, whether you're going to post an inspirational, motivational quote on social media or jump off the roof. You know, to the rest of the world, your society looks like a wreck, looks like an emotional wreck. But you see, that's because the rest of the world did not spend a third of their life glued to a screen. The average person in the global south has spent a fraction of the time that Americans have spent consuming media. They also have better relationships with their families. They have better friendships. They have better support networks. You know, they have better ways of coping with trauma. They have better ways of coping with difficulty and so on, even though they're not fortunate enough to live in the best country in the world, you know? Bolivia's bathroom isn't framed with, you know, sticky notes telling it what a winner it is and how it's going to crush it today. Indonesia isn't driving to work listening to Tony Robbins on their headphones. Do you know the awkward, embarrassed silence you would get in Mauritania if you tried to give a confidence-boosting pep talk to a bunch of students? I mean, the only people in the global south, the only people in the Muslim world that this would resonate with at all are the people in those countries who are westernized. Isn't that funny? The more westernized you become, the more Americanized you become, the more you need constant affirmations and constant confidence boosting. Because westernization is alienation from normal human approaches to life, even for Westerners. And see, I'm saying all of this to say, this is why I say that all they do is lie. All they can do is lie, without even meaning to lie. They can't be truthful because they are estranged from the truth. They're estranged from reality. They're estranged from the real world. Their cognitive health is damaged. Their cognitive functions, you know, their thinking skills, their concept of reality. And there's always this smoldering, simmering, mental, psychological, and emotional illness that they're constantly trying to suppress and deny. They're barely holding themselves together, wallahi. Like I said, you flood social media with all your insecurity. You flood social media with all your inadequacy, your low self-esteem continuously. All the, you know, forced displays of bliss, all the beauty filters, all the endless cliched personal development advice. Everyone knows that you're not trying to inspire anyone but yourself. Because your life is so vacuous, your life is so purposeless, your life is so mundane compared to the fake version of life that you spent 100,000 hours absorbing since childhood. And you can't bear to compare the reality of your life with that false version of reality. So you barely are able to even walk out the door without medicating yourself in the morning, medicating yourself either with alcohol or narcotics or prescription drugs, or medicating yourself with social media likes for some vapid quote about living your best life. I mean, think about it. Your society came up with this thing. You tell people, fake it until you make it. Fake it. Fake being capable. Fake being qualified. Fake being successful. Fake being happy. You know, fake being beautiful with your beauty filters. Fake being fit. Fake being healthy. Fake being motivated. Fake being strong. Fake being wise. Fake being smart. Fake being informed. This is what you teach your people. This is what you teach your society. Why? Is it because you used to teach them that if you work hard, you can make it, and everyone found out that that was a lie? So now you tell them that the key to success is to be fake? What kind of culture is this? And again, understand that you're broadcasting this pathology all across the internet to the whole world. The whole world sees it. And now everyone knows that you're faking. Everyone knows that you're frauds. See, I'm telling you, it's impossible to get anything even like the truth from these people, because they themselves are cut off from the truth. It's not their fault. It's not necessarily because they are deliberately lying. They're deliberately dishonest. No, but they are no more capable of telling the truth than I'm capable of speaking Swahili. They can't make any sense even if they want to. The society has paralyzed them. They've been victimized. They've been traumatized. And then they were propagandized. They've been militarized, desensitized, dehumanized, and monetized. And yes, they've been neutralized, and that's a whole lot of lies. You know? So if you're American, I mean, if you're Western generally, but especially if you're American, if you were raised in America, and you went through that 110,000 hours of programming, then you have to understand that in order for you to even start learning about reality, if to even start learning, you have to understand you're not even starting at zero. You're in a hole. You're at less than zero. Because it isn't just that you're ignorant about the world, you have been miseducated about the world. So you have to actually unlearn all of that miseducation. You know, all of those tens of thousands of hours of programming, hundreds of thousands, in fact, because that includes not just your media consumption, but it also includes your schooling, your so-called education too. So you have to unlearn all of that indoctrination. You have to unlearn all of that programming just to get you out of that hole, just to get you up to zero. You understand? So that then maybe you can actually start to learn about the world that you live in. You have to get to zero first. But not only have they got you in a hole, they've got you to where you don't even know how to climb out of the hole. You don't even have those skills, the climbing skills, because they taught you the most dysfunctional approach to knowledge and the most dysfunctional approach to the processing of information imaginable. You know, it's an approach that basically prevents any sort of understanding. And I think it's calculated. See, this is where you have to understand that there's layers of gaslighting that they do. The complexity of their tactics to mislead you. It's not that straightforward. It's not just that, you know, the gaslighting for them isn't just that they want to make you believe that you're not seeing what you think you're seeing. You know, it's not just trying to tell you that something is other than what it is, and what you can tell it is, what you see it is. That's amateur level, you know, telling you it's day when it's actually night. No, they go deeper than that. They'll actually have you doubting your own reasoning. They'll make you doubt not only what you're seeing, but they'll make you doubt the whole mental process that takes place in your mind that explains to you what you're seeing. They're throwing a monkey wrench in the whole machinery of your common sense. Like if it's night, okay, if it's night and they tell you that it's day, then they'll tell you, well, the sun is actually there. It didn't go away. Technically, the sun's light is still shining on the earth after all. So what does night really even mean, actually? You know, night means the absence of the sun, right? And the sun is never actually absent. So really, there's no such thing as night, actually, if you think about it. You see what I mean? This is what they do. This is how they play with words. This is how they manipulate and how they abuse normal logical sense, just so that they can make everything nonsensical. Because when everything is nonsense, then nothing means anything. There's no right or wrong. Nothing has a definition. Nothing has any meaning. Everything is arbitrary. Everything is subjective. Everything is meaningless. And that's how they want it. That's how they want you to operate in the world. I'm telling you, it's intellectual sadism. They're torturing your mind. And they've done it to you your whole life. And then at the end of that, even intelligence and even sense don't have any meaning or value. Which means that anyone and everyone's opinion has equal validity and equal value, which is the same thing as devaluing knowledge, devaluing truth. Please understand me. And that's free speech, so-called. You know, free speech, the way they do it, is just a way to completely drown out reasonable, intelligent, informed, and knowledgeable voices. That's why they support free speech. Because the truth is, if you want to learn, the only way to learn is to listen. Is to shut your own mouth and listen. There's no other way to do it. Nobody learns by talking. Your own voice never taught you anything. You know, they say talk is cheap. Well, in America, it's free, and they made it free for a reason. And the reason is because they want the noise. They want the noise. They've worked it out so that you can actually censor people even more effectively by letting everyone talk. Now they don't have to silence anyone anymore. They don't have to silence anyone. All you have to do is increase the volume on everyone so that then the voices that you should be listening to can't be heard. Oh, it's brilliant. It's as brilliant as it is diabolical. Now that's the way they can make sure that you never get out of the hole. You see how it works? So my message first is for the Muslims, for our ummah, and for the people in the global south more broadly. The decolonization of your intellect requires that you recognize that non-Muslim Westerners, that Americans, are literally incapable of telling the truth. Even if they want to, they can't do it. You're dealing with the people who are afflicted with debilitating cognitive damage, debilitating emotional disorders, crippling psychological and mental confusion and dysfunction. They'll treat a yes or no question like it's a multiple choice. They'll treat it like it's an essay question. No, you need to push all of that aside. You need to push all of that off the table. You need to hit the mute button on all of that. And as for Westerners, as for Americans, I'm telling you that you need to recognize what your society has done to you. You need to recognize that no society that cares about you would ever do that to you. And you need to realize that your society requires you to pump yourself up, hype yourself up, intravenously inject a constant flow of affirmations and motivations and constant pressure to fight and to struggle and to hustle and to compete and fake it until you make it. Well, that's not a society that wants you to succeed. That's a society that does not facilitate your success. It's a society that makes success unattainable. And then they try to make you feel like it's your fault that you're not a billionaire. They want you to feel like it's your fault and that you're a failure because their system is rigged. They want you to think that it's all your fault that 10% of that population controls 70% of the wealth. And make you think it's your fault that you didn't try hard enough to get into that 10%, as if the 90% of the population are the blameworthy ones and not the inhumanly greedy 10%. And you need to realize that your society has wronged you. They've wronged you very badly. You need to realize that you're not safe, you're not healthy, you're not informed, and you're not happy. And they have deprived you of even the ability to ever become any of those things. All you can do, all you are allowed to do, and all that is actually required of you to do is to fake it. No matter how bad it is, no matter how bad it gets, you're expected to just slap on a big white tooth smiling filter and pretend. They want you to perform America. That's your obligation. Forget about your own happiness. You have to perform America for the world. Never mind that that whole audience is mortified by this performance, and they've already left the building.
It showed me a lot of things. Number one, it showed me that racism is a learned response. Nobody's born a bigot. You have to teach bigotry, and that's what we do in this country. I found out how it feels to be on the receiving end of racism because I'm blue-eyed, and the brown-eyed children were on the top in that first day. And I found out how it feels to be treated badly by people over whom you have power because of having the wrong color eyes. I found out how it feels to be subjected to unbelievable and unreal discrimination because of a physical characteristic over which I had no control. I thought I knew about racism. I thought I knew about child psychology. I knew nothing. All I knew was what I had learned in school. And what I had learned in school was not education. What I got in school wasn't education. It was indoctrination. I was taught how to be a good American citizen. And in this country, we think that the only Americans are the ones who live in the contiguous 48 states of the United States. Americans are everybody from the very north tip of Canada to the very southern tip of South America. But we, in our arrogance, say that we are the only Americans. If you're really going to keep this America to Americans, we don't dare build a wall on the southern border of the United States because those people, those brown-skinned people that are going to come across that border are Americans. Now we'd better choose our language or choose our behaviors. Let me tell you something. It wasn't a study and it wasn't an experiment. I don't experiment with children without their knowledge or their permission. It was experiential education. It was giving a child an experience for the purpose of changing their brain. And that's exactly what it does every time I do it.
Now, you conducted the same study, I'm sorry, not study.
Exercise.
Exercise with adults.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And is it any different between the children and the adults?
Adults get more violent. I've been hit several times by white males, angry white males. I've had a knife pulled on me. They ran me out of Uniontown, Pennsylvania at midnight one night, 3 carloads of blacks did, to get me out of town because the teachers that I put through the exercise in a very limited way were so angry that they called the superintendent in the afternoon and said, if you don't get that bitch out of town, we're going to kill her. So they got me out of town. First time I've been scared. And the last time I've been scared. Because I found out that day that they could kill me, but they couldn't kill the idea. Victor Hugo said, no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. The idea of one race, the human race, is an idea whose time has come. We are not going to be able to stop it no matter what they do. They can elect Trump after Trump after Trump, and that will not stop the idea that there's only one race on the face of the earth. It's the human race, and we are all members of it. You and I are cousins. Now, if you don't like being my cousin, that's too bad for you. But we are all in the same family. We are members of the family of man.
You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority. The myth of race has to be maintained at all costs in this country. Because if white people have to give up the color of their skin as being something that makes them perfect, what do they have left? If we start teaching the truth about history, if we start teaching about Nile Valley contributions to civilization, it will totally change the way we conduct ourselves in the classroom. It will have to. Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where people are already living. But we celebrate that every October. It's a lie. We need to get over, we need to stop telling the myths and start telling the truth.
So when you tell people that they're racist, and it must have some kind of effect, because most people will say, I'm not racist.
I'm not a racist. Why, some of my best friends are black.
Right.
Yeah, and then you say, name one. Or this one, I don't see color. And when some woman says to me, I don't see color, I say, I knew that if you saw color, you wouldn't dye your hair that way. Or I say, if you saw color, you wouldn't wear that shirt with those pants. I believe that you don't see color. It's an attempt to deny skin color. And it's an attempt to deny what's wrong with seeing the color of my skin. Is it all right for you to see me kind of pink? That's okay for me. I don't mind. And I suspect that you don't mind being seen the color you are. You have a right to be what you are. And until people in this country and people in this world get it into their heads that the first modern human beings that evolved on this earth were black women. They evolved in sub-Saharan Africa about 280,000 years ago, and every human being on the face of the earth today has the memory of those black women's genetic structure in their genes. Now, we don't want to admit that, but that's the way it is. And as people moved farther and farther from the equator, their bodies produced less and less melanin, so their hair, their skin, and their eyes got lighter. As they moved into the east, they ate a lot of fish and a lot of vegetables, so their skin took on a different tone. I found that out when I was raising little kids. My husband worked in a supermarket. He was the head of the produce department. And they had lots of oranges that they couldn't sell, so he'd bring them home. And I was feeding my kids orange juice like you never saw in your life. They began to have an orange cast to their skin. I thought they had a liver problem. So I took him to the doctor, and she said, what are you feeding these kids? I said, well, lots of orange juice. She said, stop it if you want them to stop being orange. Now, if you think that skin color isn't anything other than the body's natural reaction to the natural environment, get over it.
So if all white people are racist, according to you, can they be reprogrammed?
Of course they can. Of course they can. Of
How?
course they can be. It's called education. I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duc dus, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. Now, I know you can change them. The second year I did the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise in my classroom, it was filmed by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They gave me a copy of that film. I showed it to my father. My father was about 59 years old at the time. He's been a farmer all his life. He raised six kids, lost one, raised six. Watched that film as a 59-year-old man. When it was over, he stood up, and with tears in his eyes, he took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his overalls, his bib overalls, and said, I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old. Nobody had dare say to me, this doesn't work, this is too harsh, this isn't necessary. You can't teach an old dog new tricks because they're wrong. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach people to give up the myth of racism. Somebody taught the Greeks to give up the myth that the sun was a god in a golden chariot that went across the sky every morning. They believed that for hundreds of years. We have believed the myth of 3 or 4 races, different races in this country, for long enough. 572 years or something like that is enough of that. It was a lie to begin with, and it's a lie to...
Trainer and human rights activist Jane Elliott. Now, we often hear about reverse racism now.
There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. You can only be a racist if you have the power to institutionalize what you're doing to people who are different from you. What we're calling reverse racism is natural reaction to being treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. Now, don't ever let anybody say to you or about anyone around you that people don't like that person because of the color of their skin. That isn't the reason white people don't like people of color. They don't like people of color because they don't understand about skin color. And they don't understand that we all are descendants of somebody who looked like your mother.
That's deep.
You don't really want to get me started on this because
I do want to get you started.
I'm really angry about how we are miseducating the American mind.
And what I like the most about what you're doing in your exercises is that you come in with a very direct attitude. You even call yourself the B word.
Well, but you see, the B word for me is the one that's most often used to refer to me. It used to bother me a lot. For me, the B word is an acronym for being in total control, honey. So you want to call me that? It'll prove to me that you're out of control. And then I'll whip out my little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife and take care of it for you. Go on.
So is it necessary to strip away all of a white person's power, like in your exercises, in order for them to see the light? Or is there another way
It's necessary to do what we do in offices and in the military and in schools and colleges and in hospitals and in community groups all the time. What we do is we become our parent ego. We go into our parent ego state, and that forces all those we're working with into their child ego state. And if you watch our present so-called president, he spends most of his time either in his child or his parent ego state. He never gets into his adult ego state unless he's reading off the teleprompter. And he is such a poor reader that oftentimes he makes mistakes, and then he is instantly in his child ego state right in front of your very eyes. It's absolutely fascinating to watch it happen.
Speaking of our president, a lot of people say that racism has risen under him.
Anybody who doesn't say that hasn't been paying attention. It absolutely has. I'm getting more hate mail now than I have gotten for years. The kinds of things that are being said in this country today are things that he has said for the last 2 years. He has said them publicly, and he got elected because he said them publicly. We have a group of people in the United States of America who were in response to 8 years of a black man in the White House and the possibility that they might have from 4 to 8 years of a woman in the White House, will elect anything that walks and can chew gum at the same time. This last election, as far as I'm concerned, was a direct response to having a black man in the White House for 8 years. And it's time to change the White House to the President's house. This is ridiculous to call the place where the President of the United States lives the White House. It sends the wrong message. It says, I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, "I'm trying to save the White House for you white people." That says it all. And at that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. Now this is something that has to be changed, and it has to be changed. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's time to change the name of the White House to the President's house or the President's residence, which has a nice ring to it, don't you think?
Okay, let's just say that Donald Trump, President Trump, is trying to bring the country together like he said he would do. Wait a second, he's trying to bring the country together. How would he go about doing that?
Resign. If he really wants to bring the country together, all he has to do is resign and take his, with him? The second in command, the vice president. That would bring the country together. But right now, the only way he can bring the country together is put somebody else in the president's office. He does not know how to be a president. He does not know what legislation is about. He does not know how to do this job. He didn't intend to get this job. And had it not been for the Electoral College, he wouldn't have this job. Mrs. Clinton won the popular vote. The only reason we have this person as the President of the United States right now is because the members of the Electoral College didn't do what that Electoral College was designed to do. Thomas Jefferson designed that to make sure that no one who was unfit for that office would ever be elected President of the United States. The Electoral College last year absolutely defeated that.
With the state of the country being what it is right now, there's a lot of conversations taking place about, let's have a conversation about race. How would a person go about having that conversation? What can they expect to happen in a conversation
Well,
like
the
that?
first thing they have to do is not talk about tolerance. I found out the day I was on the bottom in the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise with my students. I found out how it feels to be tolerated. I found out that tolerance means put up with or allow me to be. I don't need your allowance, and I don't need to be tolerated. I want to be valued, recognized, and appreciated. Put your tolerance where the sun doesn't shine. I do not believe in tolerance because in this country, we tolerate zits when we're little, zits when we're teenagers, hot flashes when we're old, and the flu and bad weather in between. We tolerate ugly things that are going to go away. I don't intend to tolerate anyone. I intend to recognize, appreciate, and value people, not to tolerate them. And I have all kinds of respect for the man who is part of the tolerance group in Atlanta, maybe. I have all kinds of respect for those folks, but we've got to change it from tolerance because the powerful can tolerate. The powerless have to wait to be tolerated. I have no time for that.
I like that.
No, I'm going to get lots of angry responses to that one. And I understand that. But I'm reading a book right now. Everybody needs to read this book. It's called, everybody has to read this. Everybody that's watching this has to read this book on tyranny. 20 things that we've learned over the last 100 years in this country that have put us in the position we're in now and what we can do about it. Everybody has to read this book. They should read this book first, and then they should read The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And once you've read The Myth of Race, you will never, ever again go along with the idea that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different races. It was a lie made up by the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition. And before that, there were different colors, but race had nothing to do. There was only one race, the human race. We made that whole thing up. It's time to get rid of it. We have the power to do that. This country got ready for World War II in about 6 months. And you're telling me that we can't destroy racism? White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race, and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
Can we go back 1 second?
Sure you can.
You criticized President Trump.
Did I?
One thing that a lot of people have criticized former President Obama on was not speaking out on race enough. Do you think he failed in that?
What if he had spoken out enough on race? Imagine what would have happened to him. The man is still alive. Do you remember Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Do you remember Malcolm X? Do you remember all those people have been killed not because of the color of their skin, but because of the fear of white people that someone who isn't white is going to look better, sound better, act better, do better than they do? Mr. Obama was the president of all of us. He wasn't just the president of black people. He was the president of all of us. The man who's there now is and claims to be the president of the people who look like him. When he says, make America great again, what he's really saying is, make America hate again.
Human rights activist Jane Elliott. Today, most urban sectors, especially Milwaukee, remains hyper-segregated. Why is it taking so long, or why doesn't it seem like we can move the button on diversity in neighborhoods?
Because the people who have the power in this country are the people who have the money. And the people who have the money are going to decide where people live. You need to realize that there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education, and that's a fact. You need to realize that it is not the intent of white people to let this situation change in favor of anyone but themselves. And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute, and he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, "The main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country." He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you exactly, almost exactly what he says. He says there are 3 things we can do to solve this. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again, he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you? And if it doesn't, I want to know why it doesn't. If it doesn't, you don't understand what racism is. And I think it does. When we close Planned Parenthood clinics because we think they're there only for abortion, we need to take another look. They are used for many, many, many things, and many women need the things that they can get from Planned Parenthood clinics. But we are willing to do away with all that good to avoid allowing white women to have control of their own bodies. Now, nobody had better tell one of my daughters or granddaughters what they can do with their body. You haven't that right. Now, it would be interesting if we were as concerned about sperm cells, wouldn't it? I mean, we could take a whole lot of fun out of you boys' lives.
Right. A lot of people don't understand the trauma associated with race and racism. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with?
The trauma associated with it? Yeah. One of the main traumas is it tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where their trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now, recently, that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic. And that's the reason we have to solve this problem, and we have to solve it now. I will ask folks tonight, how many of you black folks want to get even with all white people? And that's what white people are quite certain blacks are going to want to do, is get even with all white people. And nobody will raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many of you want to get even with 1 or 2? Every hand will go up, and you know why, and so do I. White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. What we have done in the past, we can learn from that. And we'd better learn from that. Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. And when you read this book, you'll realize that that's exactly what we're doing. We're repeating the mistakes that we have made in the past because we aren't teaching about these mistakes in the present. We are not teaching history that is true. We aren't teaching social studies.
Hi guys, welcome back once again to my YouTube channel. I'm B-Boy. Remember, if it was for the first time you come across my video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe and share. Okay guys, into this clip is all about Shahid Bolson. I would really want you to go and visit his clip because you have all seen how he has good teaching. He has really came out and said that a lot of people, they are really saying that America is a land of more opportunities. America, if you go there, you live a better life, but they really don't know the real sense, or they really don't know the real deep meaning of what takes you to live in there. He still came out and said that those white people who are living there, they are really struggling a lot. A lot of them, they have went through maybe sexual abuse, when a lot of them they are being depressed, a lot of them they are going through a lot of hardship in life, whereby some youth they end up doing suicides or committing suicide. And a lot of kids in America are being raised by single parents. We have all seen how these children, a lot of them, they raised by single parents, and a lot of them, most of their time, they really spend on the internet, either on the internet, television, that has programmed them to just think in other way, whereby if anything happened to them, they say that it's just like a movie. They spend a lot of their most of their time on internet, on television, whereby they have little time to work, whereby these people are being depressed a lot. And Shahid Boston has still come out and said that the people who are really gaining or who are really getting a lot of money in United States are those guidance companies in United States. Those companies, they are really taking a lot of money from these people, and the therapists are always also getting a lot of money, but they ain't maybe gaining anything, because these people, when they go to visit a therapist, they also affect them, because they just want to do what these people want them to do. Those guidance and those companies that are in United States, that they are there, maybe guiding people on how to live a better life, or maybe guiding and counseling a lot of people. They're really earning a lot of money, because a lot of people in United States are being depressed. And this is the reason why Shahid Wilson has really came out and said that those people who are not living from United States and they just admire their life, they should stop, because this is a land of no more opportunity, or the land of maybe good future, because these people are really struggling. If you are in a country whereby you are just stress free, you are doing your things, you are working, you are doing your things without any pressure, without any stress, you are at a good place. But this is the things that we are seeing on television, or we are seeing on the internet. These people, most of the things, they are really just faking it. You know, they say fake it until you make it, because a lot of people, they are really faking their lifestyle, they are really faking how they are living. Maybe they are really faking of how they are being happy, they are really faking of how they are maybe married and happy, but in real sense these people are really still struggling a lot. And this is the reason why maybe they are telling these people, or whenever you are anywhere and you want to go to this place, just be prepared, because you're going to go through a lot, especially when you're going to a country like maybe from when you're going to these western countries. These western countries kids, they are being programmed on just staying in the houses, watching movies, playing video games, spending all their time on the internet, whereby these things, they are really affecting them a lot, whereby if this person is being depressed, he can maybe kill himself or herself while just in his room, and no one can notice. If this person is maybe suffering from anything else, he can't share it with his families, he can't share it with his friends, because in United States they are being programmed to live by themselves. They don't have friends. You don't have to get close to your family or to your mothers. You have just programmed to live by yourself. That's the reason why a lot of people in United States, maybe they prefer to live with animals. You can find someone who has his pet. Maybe a lot of people, they are living with the dogs, and you can wonder, while maybe you are in Africa, how can this person just live with a dog and it's okay? It's because of how they are being programmed to live alone. They have not programmed maybe to marry on in, because they feel like this is the life that they deserve, because they want that loneliness. And Shane Bolson, I recently come out and said that this is not the land of more potential, the land of when you go there you will be happy. If you haven't prepared yourself, you will go through a lot of people, a lot of things. You will be so depressed. You will you will just face a lot of things that just need you to maybe visit therapist, or maybe visit a guide and counseling company each and every day. And this is the reason why this girl, if you can quote anything, a lot of people, they are really quoting a lot of quotes on online, and a lot of people, they are really struggling. If you are in United States, there is a lot of struggle in there. That's life that maybe you are living by alone, or you are being raised, because a lot of families are being raised by either single parents, either you are being raised by your mom or your dad. You don't have that love for both parents, or for both fathers and for both father and mother, because these people, they really end up maybe arguing, and they went in a separate way, they divorce themselves, whereby if you are a child, you either go with your mother or with your father, because That's what the law really state out. And if a child can be either raised by a mom or a father alone, he can't have that father and mother love because it's lacking one thing. So those people who are saying maybe there is more dreams or these people are living a better life, maybe kindly just watch out and learn more about them. So guys, if it was for the first time I come across my video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe and share. Thank you so much for your time. May God bless you whenever you are. One love.